now.
Stay safe.
This sports report is brought to you by Salisbury's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Now, Sports 2 with Reggie Chapman.
I think when you look at it at 24, if the right wide receiver's there, you'd have to take a look. There are 4 guys that are kind of a cut above. When you look at Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs III, CeeDee Lamb, Jefferson, I don't think any of those guys are going to be there. If any of them were, I'd take them in a heartbeat and I'll walk away.
Good evening and welcome back. I'm Reggie Chapman with your sports. New Orleans Saints are like every other team in the NFL, heading into an uncharted territory as the league's first virtual draft kicks off next Thursday. And it will not look anything like what you see behind me. Team personnel will have to work in separate locations and communicate over the phone or through the web. Sports 2's Matt Trent has more on what has been an odd time right now for NFL teams heading into a day that'll shape their future.
I'm hoping nobody knocks some coffee on their laptop and then they end up just panic drafting somebody.
Virtual reality used to be a place aside from real life. Now, with the NFL draft being digital, it's the new normal.
I think the biggest thing is probably it's going to slow down how quickly the drafts occur or the trades occur, because you've got to have a few more conversations. You can't just look at somebody next to you. There should only be a limited number of voices anyways making those decisions. So by and large, the fact that you have to do this all digitally shouldn't really hamper the process that much.
Ben's point is valid, but factor in that these teams are evaluating players based on actual game tape and virtual pro days. Next weekend has the potential for a few draft day disasters.
Every front office, from an NFL perspective, wants to see things with their own 2 eyes. And it's hard to do that in this scenario because you don't have scouts that can go see things live and in person. That's why something like the Combine is so valuable, and that's why so many teams send players there, because you get verified times, verified measurements. I think there's going to be a bit of skepticism and a bit of caution from NFL teams.
As complicated as this new process has been, having success in the NFL hasn't changed.
It all is going to boil down to you either got to have the goods or you don't. And I think you've got to, if a team has drafted you, if they signed you at a certain spot, obviously they think you've got potential. And I think teams are going to be willing to look at, okay, maybe this rookie class doesn't look like some of the ones we've had before. It's really going to delay, that acclimation period for a lot of these guys. So I'm curious to see, if and when we get back to a somewhat normal schedule this summer, how all of this looks.
In Baton Rouge, Matt Trent, WBRZ Sports 2.
All righty, thank you, Matt. During the 3-day virtual draft next week, 58 players around the country will be included during the broadcast with cameras inside their homes. LSU leads all colleges with 8 guys taking part. Joe Burrow, K'Lavon Chaisson, Lloyd Cushenberry, Grant Delpit, Christian Fulton, Thaddeus Moss, Justin Jefferson, and Patrick Queen. Overall, 24 SEC players have agreed, including 7 from Alabama. Thankfully for Tiger fans, some of those names you just heard are potential targets for the Saints in the first round. New Orleans has the 24th pick in the NFL draft this year. And as we heard draft analyst Mike Detillier say a couple of minutes ago, if a wide receiver like Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, or Justin Jefferson are still there, he believes the Saints can't pass up on that chance to add them to what is already a lethal offense. Unfortunately, he also, like he said, believes they won't make it that far, so the focus will shift to the other side of the ball.
I think what it leaves you is a situation of what area you need to upgrade the most. And I look at it's on defense. And where a Patrick Queen at inside linebacker who could also play on the weak side, Christian Fulton, who could be a young cornerback to develop opposite Marshawn Lattimore. Those, to me, those 2 areas defensively stick out the most that you need to get better at early in the draft.
All right, that's it for sports, but real quick, speaking of drafts, Aiyana Mitchell, LSU's women's basketball player, has a chance to get drafted in tonight's WNBA draft. Make sure you watch in for that. That's it for sports. Back to you after this.
Hello, I'm Brennan.
Jenny King, the king of clean.
This sports report is brought to you by Janny King, the king of clean. Now, Sports 2 with Reggie Chapman.
You don't have a second-round pick, but one thing I'll say, Sean is very aggressive. And if there's a player out there he wants, he has shown, I'm going to trade to get him. And he'll give up future picks to do it.
Yeah, that's right. NFL draft season is like nothing else. So much uncertainty, and with a head coach like Sean Payton, anything is possible. Good evening and welcome back. I'm Reggie Chapman with your sports. We'll have more on the draft in a moment, but tonight we first begin with some baseball news as a couple of LSU Tigers seem to be on the move. According to The Athletic, pitcher Eric Walker has entered the transfer portal. The former freshman All-American that sat out of all of 2018 after having Tommy John surgery had a record of 5-5 in 23 appearances over the last 2 years. Now, meanwhile, infielder Hal Hughes also entered the transfer portal. He started 109 games as a defensive specialist in his career with a batting average of 199. Now, switching gears back to the gridiron, the New Orleans Saints hold the 24th pick in the first round, but after that we'll have to wait 64 selections until they're back on the clock again. This because they traded their second rounder with Miami to select center Eric McCoy last year. A decision that worked out considering he started every game and was a consensus all-rookie selection. So now the question, of course, is what do the Saints do this year? Because nobody knows what exactly will be available by the time the Saints pick comes around at number 24. Draft analyst Mike Detillier believes that because of how the talent shakes out in this class, trading down into round 2 might be a smart decision.
I think the meat and potatoes of this draft is from rounds 2 through early part of round 5. My cutoff point, I had 23 what I call surefire first-round picks. From 24 to like 54, I mean, everybody's jammed in there. So you can get the same sort of player, it might be a different position, if you trade back a little bit and you would get, let's say, an extra second or an extra third-round pick. That's what I would want in this draft class.
So with that, if the Saints decided to trade back to get an extra pick, this would be the first time with general manager Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton together at the helm that is done. Now, the question then is, who do the Saints go after? According to Detillier, the choice depends on who can help the team as soon as they arrive to camp, especially now considering some of the moves the Saints made this offseason.
I don't buy none of that best available stuff. I think that's a bunch of hooey. Listen, you're picking the best player at the biggest need position. You're trying to fill needs. I'll worry about 2021 and 22 when that happens. You know, listen, I just spent a ton of money on a 32-year-old free safety and a 33-year-old wide receiver. You know, I want to win today. I got a 41-year-old Drew Brees at quarterback. So I want to get a guy that can come in. I don't want to give him a red shirt. I want him to play.
All right, that's it for sports. Back to you at the desk, Sylvia.
Reggie, thanks, and we thank you for watching WBRZ News 2. And the news continues next on WBRZ Plus on Cox Cable Channel 1011 and ETEL 2. Have a great weekend.
News keeps coming in. Now, Sports 2 with Reggie Chapman.
Good evening and welcome back. I'm Reggie Chapman with your sports. Considering many of the country's pro days were canceled because of the coronavirus, lots of NFL hopefuls didn't have a final chance to show teams what they were made of. A tough reality, especially for athletes from smaller schools. And that is why at Southern today, Jaguars like linebacker Calvin Lunkins, defensive lineman DeKavian Champion and Joe Davis, and many more had themselves a virtual pro day where they will be sending the film out to teams today. A welcome opportunity, especially for Lunkins, who had been invited to an NFL-sponsored combine for HBCU players before it was canceled. He ran a 4.59 40-yard dash with a 37-inch vertical leap. Virtual pro days have become something pretty common before this draft, and Sports 2's Matt Trent has more on their importance for certain players this year.
Mo Wells knows training, and if you want results, Mo knows those too.
434, 439.
He's a former LSU track star, but no, he's not Joe Exotic, but he has made a living in training tigers. Now, with official pro days canceled due to COVID-19, the value of a pre-draft workout becomes slightly fickle.
The biggest advantage would be the guys that people had certain expectations on performance-wise, and they knew that maybe they couldn't meet all those expectations, right? So when you talk about disadvantages, it's the guys that needed that opportunity to showcase their athleticism and to also maybe resurface their names on the map.
Enter Grant Delpit. He needed a formal pro day to prove his injuries were a thing of the past and that the NFL would be getting 2018 Grant Delpit. But the impromptu workout with Wells served as a viable replacement.
He's healthy, as healthy as he can be. The biggest thing was for him not doing anything in combine, which was a collective decision, was to make sure that he stayed that way. NFL Combine, in a sense, is it's not a competition where teams are trying to say, oh, well, man, let's see how much money we can give this guy, right? No, it's about, all right, who is this guy really? All right, and they're looking for inconsistency.
And these workouts aren't always about the physical, as Michael Divinity is learning. Character concerns have made him a wild card amongst the LSU class, but a renewed focus to football is speaking volumes.
He's grown, right? He knows where his faults were. He knows the type of crowd that he had around him that wasn't good for him. All in all, he still made the All-Combine team.
Mo isn't trying to improve. He's trying to get his guys to prove.
Like, we're not turning water into wine here. So, with that being said, if you're not a 4-2 genetically, you're not going to become a 4-2 in these 6 to 8 weeks. So, whatever you have in you, that's what I'm going to get out of it.
In Baton Rouge, Matt Trent, WBRZ Sports 2.
All righty, thank you, Matt. By this time next week, many of the country's top talent will know where their new home will be in the NFL. And naturally, the quarterback position has been the spot dominating the headlines, and by next Saturday, all the biggest names will be well off the board. Now, after Joe Burrow presumably goes #1 in this year's draft, there's been plenty of debate as the order of the next 3 guys. Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Jordan Love are all projected first-rounders. Of the many teams potentially looking for quarterbacks, with a 41-year-old Drew Brees on the roster, the New Orleans Saints could be in the market for one as well. And while those top 4 guys likely won't be there at 24, draft analyst Mike Detillier has a familiar player to Tiger fans that might be the right fit later on in the draft.
I think he'd be a great fit for the Saints. I don't know where they would pick him at because they don't have a second-round pick. Is Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma. He's a career 65% passer. He was the player of the year in the SEC, player of the year in the Big 12. He's more of a pro-style guy. He's been well-schooled at Oklahoma. People say he had great receivers there. Well, he made them look pretty good, too. Somebody got to put the ball in their hands. And, well, he doesn't throw the ball well. 65% career passer is pretty doggone good at the college level.
It absolutely is important. It will be fun to see where he'll end up this year. That's it for sports. We'll have more news right after the break.
King of Clean. Now, Sports 2 with Reggie Chapman.
You'll have 3 of them going in the top 6 picks. Joe go 1. I think the target spot for a trade is 3 with Detroit, with Tua Tagovailoa, and then Justin Herbert. I think we'll go in the top 6, 7 picks.
It's widely considered that there will be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round. The real debate is the order after Joe Burrow at #1. Good evening. Welcome back. I'm Reggie Chapman with your sports. We'll have more on this quarterback draft class in a moment, but we begin tonight on the Bluff, as earlier today a group of Southern Jaguars with NFL aspirations used today to help their chances. This afternoon in Mumford Stadium, Jaguars like linebacker Calvin Lunkins, defensive lineman DeKavian Champion, and Joe Davis and more had themselves a virtual pro day in place of theirs that was canceled due to the coronavirus. A big moment, especially for Lunkins, who had been invited to an NFL-sponsored combine for HBCU players before it was also canceled. He ran a 4.59 40-yard dash with a 37-inch vertical and went through other drills. All that footage will be sent out to NFL teams. Now, switching gears back to the offensive side of the ball, Utah State quarterback Jordan Love is one of the wild cards going into next week's draft. Widely projected as a first-round talent, he is a player scouts believe, with some help, could be a potential star. At 6'4", 224 pounds, Love has the physical attributes and a big arm. And although wild scouts in 2018, he struggled this last season. The big question is, where will he go? Before or after Justin Herbert? Draft analyst Mike Detillier says he's a guy to keep your eye out for.
Of where he ends up with so many free agent quarterbacks moving around, what happens with him? Now, he's a bit of a project that you might have to give a red shirt to, but he's a real talented guy that could start for you somewhere down the line.
Now, sticking with the quarterback talk, other than Love, Burrow, Tua, and Oregon's Justin Herbert, it's anyone's guess who will be the next QB off the board. Lots of teams with established quarterbacks might be in the market for some of the guys outside those top 4. And one of those teams potentially is the New Orleans Saints, considering 41-year-old Drew Brees won't be around forever. Based on how head coach Sean Payton has taken advantage of freak athletes like Taysom Hill, Detillier believes that there's a certain quarterback that LSU fans know quite well that might be a great fit.
Okay, he's a great runner. We know that. but I think he's a pretty doggone good passer. He can make all the NFL throws. He's got some body balance issues, and a lot of times his bad throws are when he throws off his back foot. A guy like Sean and working with Drew would be great for him. You will have to go up in round 2, trade up to get him, but he's a guy that he's more gifted as a passer today than Taysom Hill is. So, man, I would have a lot of interest, though I do think unless they do that, this team will go out after the draft and sign a veteran quarterback, a guy that's played. Because if Drew Brees goes down, my thing is, man, I ain't putting the season in the hands of no 21-year-old quarterback. He better be pretty doggone good. Can he make those downfield throws to make the reads and hit it right? I think in this short, quick system that Sean uses, that would be right up Jalen Hurts' alley.
To tell you with lots of love for Oklahoma's Jalen Hurts. All right, that's it for sports. We'll be right back after this break.
News keeps coming in, and WBRZ brings it to you first with support from our advertising partners. Stanley Steamer, Lake After Hours. Now, Sports 2 with Reggie Chapman.
Been doing this 35 years. It's the most talented and deepest I've ever done. I think that's sort of an offshoot of 7-on-7. You know, a lot of these 6'2", 6'3" guys that you would see playing on defense today. I ain't playing defense. I want to catch the ball.
Because the NFL has become an arms race, this year's draft is a great chance for teams to get a guy that can make an instant impact on offense. Good evening and welcome back. I'm Reggie Chapman with your sports. According to prospect grades given by the NFL, there are 12 wide receivers coming into this draft boasting a 6.3 grade or higher. Anything in that range is thought of as someone who could be a starter within their first 2 seasons. Oklahoma's CeeDee Lamb, Alabama's Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, as well as LSU's Justin Jefferson round out the top 4 prospects, all of which are projected to go in the first round. Now the real debate begins after that. According to draft expert Mike Detillier, with so much talent across the board, teams have a chance to get a real steal at wideout in the later rounds.
What will happen here is who becomes the 5th guy and the 6th guy? Because now, I learned this years ago, Jim Finks told me this. He's like, one thing to remember come draft time, the Greeks settled this years ago. When you get a chance to pick a really talented big guy or a really talented small guy, you go with the big dudes. And he says, you know what? The football is just like picking those guys the Greeks used to pick. And that's when offensive and defensive linemen peel off the board. So you're going to have receivers that have a first-round pick grade that'll fall into the 2nd round. So then also that affects the 3rd round. You're going to have 2nd-round pick receivers fall into the 3 and just continually going. It's the best year I've ever done at wide receiver. The big question mark will how many go in round 1. That's why I think a lot of teams may decide, you know what, receiver's a need for me, but I need a lineman. Let me pick the lineman, and I can get a receiver that's pretty close to that guy I got in round 1. I can get him in round 2.
All right, so here's a look at the projected spots for the first 7 wide receivers in Mel Kiper's ESPN Mock Draft 4.0. Here's Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson all going in the first 15 picks. Henry Ruggs, who ran the fastest 40-yard dash time at the Combine, Arizona State's Brandon Ayuk, and Clemson's T. Higgins round out what he projects to be day 1. Now, one of the reasons LSU's Justin Jefferson moved himself into the first round is what he managed to accomplish at the NFL Combine. Naturally, when you finish tied for 1st in the FBS in receptions and 2nd in the country in touchdown catches on a national championship winning team, you're going to have some eyes on you. Now, heading into the Combine, the question was if Jefferson had the speed to earn a first-round grade, and a 4.43 40-yard dash made it clear that he did. His trainer at IMG Academy, Mo Wells, who's taught plenty of NFL stars, including LSU Tigers like Pro Bowl wideout DJ Chark, believes Jefferson also has the tools to be a real NFL receiver.
If you've seen his growth from where he came into college and to where he's been in the last year, you can only see that trend going up. He answered every single question that anybody could have had about a wide receiver without any off-the-field issues, without any major production issues. You know, even before this historical year he had a good year last year as well. Right? So if you're looking at it from a production standpoint, a speed standpoint, an intelligence standpoint, a guy that you don't have to worry about off the field, he is that complete package in a first-round wide receiver.
All right, that's it for sports. But before we go, that Michael Jordan documentary airs tonight on ESPN at 8 o'clock. That'll be something sports fans will be looking forward to. More news after the break.
Clients the most money for their case. That's the Bart advantage.
Now, Sports 2 with Reggie Chapman.
Jerry Jeudy's my #1 ranked receiver. CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma's 2, but it's close between Henry Ruggs III from Alabama and then Jefferson's 4. And I think all 4 will go by pick 22 in round 1.
Good evening and welcome back. I'm Reggie Chapman with your sports. As we continue to break down prospects ahead of next week's NFL draft, tonight we focus on the wide receivers in a deep receiver draft. Oklahoma's CeeDee Lamb, Alabama's Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, as well as LSU's Justin Jefferson round out the top 4 prospects. According to the NFL, there are 8 more players that have draft grades of 6.3 or higher, a grade that means that they are thought of someone who could be a starter within their first 2 seasons. Now, with the Saints signing 33-year-old free agent wideout Emmanuel Sanders, a long-term wideout could be someone the Saints are looking for. Draft analyst Mike Detillier recognizes some players that could be great picks after the first round for Sean Payton's team.
I think if you're looking at if they would try to make a maneuver to get a receiver, Chase Claypool from Notre Dame, big, tall, rangy guy that can catch the football in traffic. Jalen Reagor, his dad was a defensive end. He didn't quite get that size, but man, he can run. He's a high point receiver that can go up and catch the football. One guy to watch is Devin Duvernay from Texas. He was the Texas state champion in the 100, 200 meter dash. One thing I do know, you got a lot of fast guys out there in Texas, and if he's the best, and he's learning how to play football, he reminds me a lot of Devery Henderson coming out of LSU. Very similar. Former running back, turned wide receiver, can run, and man, he is a big play artist. And he knows how to catch that little short stuff. Texas did a lot of that, so I think he'd be a good fit with a team like New Orleans.
All right, as we talk about the top guys, here's a look at the projected spots for the first 7 wide receivers in Mel Kiper's ESPN Mock Draft 4.0. He has Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson all going in the first 15 picks. Henry Ruggs ran the fastest 40-yard time at the Combine. Arizona State's Brandon Ayuk and Clemson's T. Higgins round out day 1. Now LSU's Justin Jefferson is someone that Detillier also believes will be a great pickup for the Saints. Unfortunately, he doesn't see him making it to that 24th pick. The reason is simple. The combination of its production at LSU in 2019, his performance at the NFL Combine. Scouts doubted his speed before he ran a 4.39 in Indy, and his trainer at IMG Academy, Mo Wells, who helped Jefferson get that time, believes that although people continue to doubt Jefferson, the former 2-star recruit turned national champ will continue to prove people wrong.
I've seen this guy train and, I don't see him play football games, but I watch him every single week in training, and the dude is smooth, right? It's just natural. He catches the ball smooth, he runs his route smooth, and, you can't knock that. You can't knock over 1,500 yards, 111 receptions. I don't care what you get, even if you took away 50% of the production, right? That's still over 700 yards, still over 50, 60 catches. Like, if you just cut it in half, right? If you say, you got lucky half the time. Even that is an outstanding year, right? You saw DJ Chark get, had a similar production to his year before, and now look at DJ Chark, who's a Pro Bowl wide receiver.
Now, Wells talked about that progression. In his 3 years, Justin Jefferson went from his first season where he did not record a catch but rushed for 4 yards to the record holder for receptions in a single season in LSU history in 2019. 111 was tied for the most in FBS, and his 18 touchdowns was second in the country, only behind his teammate Jamar Chase. All right, that's it for sports. We'll have more news right after this break.